Thanks for having me. Kimberly Jones. I'm the CEO of Butler. We're an independent media agency, also women-owned, which I think is apropos for the day.
Yay.
And we've worked together for a long time.
I know.
But we have nothing, Butler has nothing to do with this part of your marketing strategy, which is why I'm so excited to talk to you about it.
Butler is a critical part of our agent marketing strategy. So I own both the national brand, but also how our 20,000 agents across the country brand themselves in the world. And that's what Kimberly's agency manages for us. Very important, but not this topic.
Thank you. So let's talk about this topic, and let's talk about influencer marketing specifically for Gen Z. So when you think about the entire marketing mix, why do you think influencer is so important for this audience?
So influencers, I challenge all of you to think about influencers. I'm going to say maybe even differently. Influencers matter because they're a new media channel. They are an avenue to your current and potential customers. So that's kind of number one. Number two is micro influencers, especially if your brand hasn't dabbled working with influencers yet, are a really smart, efficient way to start a strategy with influencers. And they matter because at any age, Gen Z aside, included, influencers got that way. They got a following because they were creating content that people liked and started to follow and started to engage with. So whatever they're doing is working for the people who like it, whether you like it or not. So as long as your brand understands who your target is and you can match what a micro influencer is doing to talk to that target, I think it's a really efficient way to create through them so that they can carry your message for you.
So a lot of very, very smart marketers in the room, but there might be a few who have never started influencer marketing, and so maybe it's micro influencers. If they wanted to get started, what would be the first step?
I think you have to know who your audience is first, and then you can work with an agency partner, or there's a lot of people who are specializing in influencers these days. But it's to know who you're trying to talk to, and then matching that with your brand values. Because listen, there are a lot of micro influencers or any kind that are not brand safe for my category. I personally, Alyson, Griffin, love them, but there is no way my category or industry, let's say, could match. So that's the other thing, is you have to really understand not only who they target, but how they're reflecting and representing you. If you have an edgier brand, then an edgier micro influencer would be great. But if you don't, like me, you've got to get that sort of, I'll call it clean cut type. And I think the way to start is to know your audience and find a micro influencer who has that audience but matches you.
So I think you've done a pretty good job making State Farm maybe not edgy, but definitely very relevant, especially with Jake. So let's talk about him for a second if we can. So certainly not a micro influencer. He's like a, I don't know, macro influencer. But it's different than working with celebrities. And you have a lot of experience working with celebrities, Steph Curry, Patrick Mahomes. So what's the difference with working with somebody like Jake versus a more traditional celebrity?
Or like a TikToker, you mean?
Yeah.
Gamers, I will tell you right now, so my boys are 22 and 20, and I've missed the boat. They needed to be gamers because pound for pound, the gaming influencers make more money than Patrick Mahomes, on brand deals, right? Just that line item, than the Patrick Mahomeses of the world. Those gamers are raking it in. So if you have one of those little budding dudes, let them play. That's what I say. Don't do what I did. I have a history major and a music major. Oh my God. Okay, sorry, that was a complete digression. Sorry, oversharing. Anyway, the gamers and the micro influencers are really, really a great way to reach your audience. I think I maybe even lost the question. Are you asking? Oh, and how are they working with them? So know how much to pay, right? Gamers are more expensive, and but they really, really, really are creators. So celebrities are not content creators. They're not as good typically, actually. There are some celebrities who have a very big social media following, but a lot of times they're just taking pictures of themselves in various states of dress, actually, and just doing the cool, like you're just a window into their life. But the content creators got to where they are because they know how to engage with 6 seconds, 12 seconds. They know exactly what their audience is going to catch their attention. They know exactly how to hold their attention and captivate. They know how the algorithm works and how often to post and what to do, and they make a living doing it. And so trusting them and working with them and giving them a little bit of control is very different than a football player who comes in, I've got a script, they're not actors, but you don't pay them because they're actors. The people who love football players will still love them whether they deliver their lines, like they're in a Shakespeare play or not. And understanding the difference matters.
So you're a little bit more comfortable maybe giving them more license to create something that's relevant to their respective audiences.
I think you have to.
Yeah, versus scripted.
Right. Try on this one. If you script an influencer, it is going to be so obvious and so inauthentic, and the audience is going to sniff that out immediately. You don't want to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Should we talk about Mama Ma'ato? I want to talk a little bit more about that experience because it was amazing. I have Swifties. I have teenage daughters. You've got sons. And so they are big football fans now. And
isn't that funny?
It's crazy. Yes.
Did you see there was a couple Swifties who had Kelsey's name spelt wrong, incorrectly on the back of the jersey? I had to laugh about that.
It's hilarious. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you envisioned that moment when you put Jake next to Mama Kelsey at the Eagles game? Like, how did that come about? And whose vision was it? Did you just have this spark of inspiration? Did you get a call?
I got a call. Ryan Reynolds, Maximum Effort.
Well, that's a call I've been waiting for.
I did have a Zoom call with Ryan on Saturday. I will. Anyway, he's great. We've been working and around Maximum Effort for a couple of years, so they were not unknown to us. It was not random that he called, but call came in, and actually I was flying back from a shoot. I was in LA all week that week with Jake from State Farm, with Kevin. And usually when we have Kevin on a shoot for a week, he then, he clears his calendar because he has to, right? And then he's super busy right after that doing all the other things that he does in his life, personal and professional. And so it was Friday afternoon of the Sunday before the game, and we get a call, and Ryan has this idea that Jake from State Farm should sit next to Donna Kelsey. And it was one of those moments where we're in the insurance industry. We don't move fast at all, ever, for anything, ever. Sorry. I love you.
I know a little bit.
Yeah. And but this one was so different and interesting that we thought, well, okay, we got to figure it out. So the first thing I had to do really was to see if Kevin was even available, Jake from State Farm, because I didn't know what he had planned. And that if he wasn't available, then, okay, let's stop. There's nothing else we need to talk about. But he was, and he was super excited, of course. And so then it was literally a mad dash with Maximum Effort, who is Ryan's agency. He's got a great team, and our entire team, the PR, social, digital, creative, executives, all the way up the chain, legal, all of that. We had to swarm that thing for a solid 30 hours. And the next thing we know, he's there with Donna Kelsey.
And it looked so just natural and organic, like it just happened. You didn't have to do any work at all.
Yeah, right. He just was her guest. We recreated, obviously, the moment of Jason and Kevin walking just like Taylor and Travis walked after the game, so we recreated that. We recreated the seemingly ranch with the chicken nuggets and the condiments. So, that, and by the way, I don't know that it could have worked with a different agency specifically, because Ryan is friends with Taylor, and it mattered very much to us that she didn't feel like out of the blue some brand was trying to take advantage of her. But she was at his house at his daughter's birthday party that day, and he's like, oh yeah, I already talked to her, she's here, she thinks it's hysterical. I'm all, oh, okay, well then I guess we're going. Great.
That's awesome. So influencer in general, it's a huge market and only getting bigger and bigger. What are your predictions for the future?
The influencers are getting bigger and bigger, and I think they're a really good way for all of us to target. So all you media companies out there, and my agency, OMD, of course, we're still buying traditional media, and it matters. But as part of the mix, influencers matter a lot. If it's being endemic in the spots, using gamers in gaming, using athletes in athletics, using creative, creator people in their worlds to attract the audience, it matters. And especially with Gen Z, because they're not consuming content the way I did. I'm Gen X, I'm old. And for me, the way you just saw network television, 3 stations, they tell you everything you need to know, that's it, and you just kind of go with it. That is just not the case, obviously. And so if you're not diversifying and trying with different influencers, I think you're going to miss out on a big part of your market.
So one of the things I think that is interesting with this shift to influencer versus more traditional media channels is how you measure it. So Jake, and everything that you're doing, undoubtedly a success, but how do you quantify that success, especially to your executive team of like, how do you know that it's working and driving more policies?
Jake in particular is interesting. Do you guys remember there was a Saturday Night Live skit and Michael B. Jordan? So we've been on Saturday Night Live many times, but one of the regular players plays Jake like maybe 3 or 4 times we've been on. But Michael B. Jordan did one of those fake commercials, and it was like a big State Farm ad, and it was 2 minutes or something. And I got so many texts, "Are we okay with this?" Like, I'm all, hell yes, we're okay with this. And so when Saturday Night Live, we've been Answer on Jeopardy 2 different times. People magazine named us 100 Reasons to Love America in the month of July. It was like around 4th of July. Like, there are little things that tell us that there's cultural resonance in who he is and who we are. But it's also 1.1 million followers, the engagement in social. We get a lot of feedback digitally and in the contextual context of the world. Also, gosh, our jingle, I mean, Jake is great, but our jingle, if you go on TikTok and do Like a Good Neighbor, you will see thousands of content. We haven't asked for that. We haven't pushed the jingle in a really long time. People know it, young people, and they make content with the jingle. So those are some ways that we know. And then the other stuff is the traditional measures of our brand lift and search volume and policy binds and things like that.
Got it. Let's see here. Where do you see influencer headed in the future, especially with things like AI? That's been a big topic of, is AI going to change marketing, and will you lose some of that authenticity?
Yeah, I don't know, and we'll see. So I come from the tech industry. I spent almost 30 years at Hewlett-Packard and Intel, and so for me, that whole AI thing, I lived it. I used to have to market it, actually. And for me, it's exciting and interesting, and it will have an effect on all of us. It already has. It's been here a really long time. This is not new, all y'all. And I used to say robots are not going to rise up and kill us in our sleep. It feels like it sometimes, but I think it's a net positive, and I think that as creators, I hold hope that AI is out there scouring what's already been created by humans, visually and with words and images, and we still need that input of new to push boundaries, and the creativity of humans still matters very, very much. And I think where we can be efficient, I know our agency partners are using AI for copywriting to dynamically switch copy based on contextual relevance. Absolutely. And I think that's really smart. And we want to jump on that. But I'm not yet worried, and especially with my days in the tech industry, I'm not yet worried that it's displacing humans. I think it will make humans inherently more creative.
So you think as marketers we should be embracing AI?
I do.
And new technology in general?
100% we have to. It's going to pass you by. I mean, you have to. You don't even have a choice.
Is there anything else akin to AI that you think that we might be facing in the future?
Virtual reality. So we talked about metaverse, and then of course it sort of leveled off a little bit when the AI conversation came up a little bit more strongly recently. But that whole notion of virtual escapism, gaming, metaverse, I mean, we can call it a lot of things. That's not going anywhere. Gaming's been around for a very long time. Or television viewing, right? That whole, I'm sitting on my couch, I'm escaping into a thing out there in the world. That's not going away. So how brands can think about showing up in virtual places authentically, that's why. So Jake was one of the first non-playable characters in NBA 2K. He was the first, not one of. He was the first. And so we had a lot of experience with, and it was a long time ago, of him in a metaverse-like, virtual-like setting. And so when the metaverse rolled around and we got State Farm Park in iHeartland, in Fortnite, and on Roblox, I got all that right, it wasn't a stretch for us. And so I encourage you guys, try way in advance, do something. We didn't know that NBA 2K was going to be a precursor for how we showed up in the metaverse. Didn't even know what the metaverse was. But trying those kinds of tech-forward things all of a sudden help you down the line know how to show up and how your brand is making progress.
So it sounds like you have a very intentional kind of testing strategy. So how does that work when you're trying something new and you're going to executives and saying, I think we should do this, especially when it's things like the metaverse or gaming, things that they might be unfamiliar with or State Farm has never been a part of before?
That's hard. I will say I'm fortunate that I was hired expressly by the executives at State Farm out of the tech industry to push the boundaries and do innovative new things and push insurance, the insurance category. So they picked me for that. So I'm very fortunate, and I know not all of us are like that. But I will say, they care about, is this a test and learn? Like, make the parameters. This is a testing thing. It's low risk. Here are the risk parameters that we have around it. Here are the safeguards. Here's the message we're going to do. We're toe dipping first, small, a micro influencer. The reach is very little in the scheme of things, right? You test, you start, you learn. You always have a message that matters to the enterprise so that they can see an inherent value at selling a product or giving your service message or whatever it is you do. So they see some value there. And then it's some trust. So start really small so that you can build up a couple of those wins that then when you're ready to snap it on them, they'll like, all right, I trust you. You've done this over time. All right, let's take this step together.
So you had to build up the trust to be able to activate something like the Mama Auto moment.
That, in particular, my boss and the CEO were on an agent sales incentive trip in Lisbon. So they were on a huge time difference. I called, it was like 11 o'clock at night for them, and I'm all, we want to do Kelsey tomorrow. And it's 11 p.m. and you're not even in the country.
Imagine that conversation. They're like, what? You want to do what?
Yeah. And so, but there was a lot of faith and trust, and she asked me 300 questions, I'm not going to lie. And I answered 300 questions, and then she said, okay.
That's awesome. So you've given us a lot of advice. You've given this audience a lot of advice. Any final words? If they're contemplating influencer, whether big or small?
Yeah, I'd say trust them and have fun. You guys, it's just marketing. We are not doing anything crazy here, right? Like, you can't really make a mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Try it, do it. I think that's it. There's my mic drop.
Awesome. That was a mic drop.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Alyson.